Hey everybody, we're back to go ahead and install the motherboard into this case. One of the things that we'll be needing are these little brass standoff screws. Basically these will screw into the case itself. You can see there's one installed right here. This came pre-installed within the case, as almost every single motherboard will use these two slots here. We're going to be using a large portion all the way around the outside, and this particular case will fit multiple different sizes of motherboards. We'll also be using these black screws to screw the motherboard into the standoff once that they are inserted as well. A couple of tools that you'll need: just a Phillips head screwdriver. I do use a small socket to screw in the standoffs. So it does make it a little bit easier to insert them and screw them into the case itself. So one thing we need to understand is which of these screw holes are we going to use based upon the motherboard in which we have. We have a standard ATX motherboard, which is what we'll be using in this particular build. So I'm going to just go ahead and insert it down here. We can take a look at what screw holes we'll be using. The easiest way to do this is to line it up with the pre-installed standoffs that are already onto the case itself. Once we get it lined up here, we can go ahead and take a look at the screw holes we'll be using. So we have one right here, one next to the USB 3.0 here, one at the bottom, one that lines up all the way across the back. What we will need to do is insert a standoff into every single one of the holes that lines up with the motherboard that we have. So all the way around the outside perimeter is what we're looking at. Now the standoff screws that you should have come with your case. You can just purchase these through any computer online retailer as well. Newegg will sell them. Any of those places will sell them as well. All the way up through the top here. So we'll need to insert all of those standoffs. And the reason why we have standoff screws is to make sure the motherboard doesn't touch the case. And also when you screw the screws in, it doesn't bend or flex the motherboard, so any of the internal printed connections will break. We're just going to go ahead and insert this into the slot here. Now these can be a little bit tricky to install as the case is normally not threaded. So I'm using this small socket here to go ahead and screw them in. I'm not twisting extremely hard here. I just want to make sure they're nice and snug. And they'll go ahead and basically straighten themselves out once they hit the last thread on the screw. So that's our first screw standoff that we're putting in. We'll need another one here that lines up in the row here with the two that are already pre-installed. You know, in the back corner here, sorry, I just knocked my camera there. It can be a little bit tricky to get started. And the black case doesn't necessarily do very much for shadows here. Go ahead and screw this down. Now if you want to skip the rest of the screwing in portion, just go ahead and skip forward about a minute and a half. I don't like to fast forward into the videos. I want to show you exactly how long it's going to take to do this. That way there's no unrealized complications. And you have real life expectations of how long it should take to do. Just getting it started, and they'll go ahead and twist it into the socket. The socket wrench makes it so much easier to put in. I would suggest having one of these. The other option you can do is screw the screws into the standoffs and then use a Phillips head screwdriver to screw them in as well. That does also work. Put one right here in this corner. Need one right here in the upper corner as well. One last screw standoff to put in. Alright, we have all of our standoffs installed into the case. The next step is to go ahead and put in our rear aisle panel connector. This basically just snaps into place based on the ridges around the side of it. Let's go ahead and insert it into the back portion. Just make sure you put it in the correct way. Basically, in this particular motherboard, the audio connector to the bottom, the antenna and mother USB ports towards the top. Just make sure it snaps in there nice and snug. The motherboard will just sit up against this. So it's got this little padding on the back of this one. Next step is to go ahead and take our motherboard and go ahead and put it into the case. Now we're going to basically lay it flat, and then we're going to push it into place to line up all of the connections or screw standoffs. Now, this particular case has a groove screw standoff right in the middle, where you need to push the motherboard until it almost kind of clicks into place. Sorry about that, bumped my camera pretty hard there. Just trying to wiggle it to get it nice and lined up. There we go. We're going to go ahead and start putting our screws in. You'll see that it'll flex just a little bit. That's completely fine. Once you put the screws in, it'll be nice and snug. There won't be enough flex to hurt anything. Just make sure that you've put all of your screw standoffs in before you start trying to screw anything in. We'll go ahead and get all of the black screws that we'll be using. We need to put them in all of the screw standoffs that we have for the board. Normally I like to start kind of in the middle. Here's our screws. We'll start up here in the upper right hand corner to give me a little bit better ease of tutorial here. These do not have to put in extremely tight. You want them snug onto the board. You don't want to damage anything. They do make little protection grommets if you want those as well. I haven't found them to be extremely useful. I've never damaged a board putting the screws in, so I'm not too concerned about it. So 3 on the front side. We'll go ahead and put the 3 down towards the middle. Do the 3 towards the back side of the motherboard. Just checking to make sure the PCI slots are nice and snug. I'll be putting in dual video cards in here, so I want to make sure that it's not bowed or flexing or anything. One more screw to go. Just like that. Alright, we went ahead and installed our motherboard. If you want to see the connection of all these cables, I'm going to do that when I put the power supply in. Basically what we have are the front panel I/O connectors, so the things like the USB 3.0. We want to make sure we connect to this power supply and these cables before we put our motherboards in. You could put your radiator up here. I would also do that first before putting in the motherboard as well. It does make it a little bit easier. Depending upon the radiator, the one I have, I'm actually putting in the top portion of this case. If you found that video useful, go ahead and hit the like button. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. If you would like to watch the next portion in the series, I'll throw that down in the description of the video. As always, I appreciate you watching the video, and I'll see you on the next one.